Hi, in today's topic, I'm going to talk about the learning curve. It is an important area for CMA Part 1 and ACCA F5 performance management paper. It's a very important concept. If carefully understood, businesses can increase their profitability to many folds, as well as they will never lose any contract or tender. So in today's video, I'm going to discuss both methods which are used for learning curve. So let's talk about learning curve. Learning curve is basically when a person or an employee or a worker does the same job again and again, they develop certain expertise. And as a result, they are able to complete the job in comparatively less time as much as they took earlier. Which means as a person becomes experienced, they take less time to do a particular task as compared to when they were not experienced. For example, if I manufacture a table, for the very first time when I manufacture a table, it may take me, let's say, 50 hours. Okay, if it's taking me 50 hours, so when I manufacture the table the second time, I'm not going to repeat those mistakes. So there is a possibility, instead of taking 50 hours for the second table, I may finish the job in 40 hours. That means I've saved some time. This saving of time is because of the learning factor. I have learned from my mistakes. Now we need to understand how learning curve is used in business, and obviously if you're giving an exam, what are the things you need to know. First of all, learning curve directly applies on labor hours. We all understand that if you're costing a product, we are talking about cost of direct material, direct labor, overhead, so on and so forth. So let's forget all other costs. We are just talking about labor hours. There are two companies. Company A doesn't know anything about learning curve. So first table 50 hours, second table 50 hours. So if they're making two tables, their total labor hours will be 100 hours. And if you're paying laborer at the rate of $10, so you'll be invoicing the customer just for labor cost 100 into 10, that is $1,000. But a company which understands learning curves, that learning is taking place, the second table may not take that much time. So first table 50 hours, second table 40 hours. So 90 hours into 10 will give us 900. So there is a clear-cut difference in labor cost of $100. So the very first formula for learning curve which we used specifically in CMA Part 1 as well as in ACCA, we call it Cumulative Average Time Learning Model. How it is done? Just have a look at this. We're assuming that first unit, or maybe when you're making the first table when you're making, we're assuming, let's say it takes 100 hours. Here one thing is very important. When we're talking about cumulative average time learning model, the learning only applies when the production doubles. If you're making first table, okay, when you make the second table, that means you're making it twice as much than before, learning will apply. Learning will not apply on the third table, but on the fourth, first table, then the double of it, second table, then fourth table, then eighth table. This is how learning curve applies. It doesn't apply on odd numbers, okay? So we are assuming that the first table takes 100 hours, and for understanding purposes, learning curve, or you can call it the learning rate, is 80%. I tell you what is meant by 80%. So if the first table takes 100 hours, so I'm making one more table. So what is the production now? Total 2 tables. So it is very obvious that if first table took 100 hours, 2 tables should take 100 multiplied by 2, it should take 200 hours. But because there is learning curve of 80%, you multiply it by 80%. So 2 tables should now take 160 hours. This 80% means that the work will be done in 80% of the normal required hours. See, this is the normal required hours. First table is made in 100 hours. So 2 tables should be made in 182. This is the normal time required for 2 tables. But because there is 80% learning curve, both the tables would be done in just 160 hours rather than 200 hours. Now, as I told you, learning curve, this 80% only applies when the production doubles. So now if I'm making the third chair, learning will not apply. Fourth chair, yes. So now production has doubled. From 2, it has become 4 tables. So what should be the total labor hours? Look, for 2 tables, the total hours after learning is 160. So 160, because I'm not making 2, I'm making 4. So twice as much, you multiply by 2. It should take 320 hours for 4 tables to complete. But we need to understand there is a learning curve. Learning is taking place. Workers are learning. They're getting experience. They're not repeating their mistakes. So 4 tables will not be made in 320 hours, but 80% of the time. So if I work out 80% of 320, I get 256 hours. Which means first table took 100 hours. If I'm making 2 tables, normally it should take 200 hours. But because of learning curve, only 160 hours will be required to make 2 tables. When the production doubles from 2 to 4 tables, instead of 160, 160 is only for 2 tables. But if it is 4 tables, 160 into 2, that means it should take 320 hours. But we have 80% learning curve. That means instead of 320, the job will be done. By job, I mean the 4 tables will be finished in just 80% of the time, which is 256 hours. Further, if the production doubles, so learning will take place when the production doubles from 4 to 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now we are talking about 8 tables. See, from 4 to 8, production has doubled. So 256 hours were for 4 tables. So if I write it here, 256 is for 4 tables. For 8, I should multiply it by 2. So 256 multiplied by 2 will give me 512 hours. But 8 tables will not take 512 hours because we have 80% learning curve. So you just multiply it by 80%. It gives me 409.6 hours. So we need to understand, let's say company A, which does not apply learning curve in their calculations, in their costing, and company B, which does. What if a customer places an order? And here we are assuming that we are ignoring all other costs. We are just talking about labor cost. So company A, what company A will do, which does not use learning curve at all, they're talking about if one table takes 100 hours, if one table takes 100 hours, so 8 tables should take 800 hours, and we are assuming that laborers are paid at the rate of $10. So the total labor cost will be $8,000. This is what they will include in their costing for cost of production or cost of making 8 tables. We are not talking about material and overheads, keeping them constant. Only labor cost, company A, without understanding that learning is taking place, they will be quoting 8,000. But if this is company B understands that every time production doubles, there is some learning taking place, and that can be calculated from historical figures. So here I have just assumed 80%, which means if a customer places an order for 8 tables, company B will be billing 409.6 labor hours into $10. So company B will be billing just for labors 4,096. Now you can well look at the difference. 8,000 labor cost plus material and overheads, 4,000 labor cost plus material and overhead. So company B would definitely get the tender. Their quotes will be approved and they will get the contract. I hope you guys have understood this much. Another thing which is important here is to understand the concept of incremental hours. Please understand what are incremental hours. Look at this. The first table took 100 hours. And when you're making 2 tables, a total of 160 hours are used. So you may be asked in an MCQ, what is the time taken to make the second table? not both the tables, the second table. So if the first table took 100 hours and two tables take 160, that means out of 160, if I minus the time taken for the first table, the second table actually just took 60 hours to make. Sometimes you're asked this in the exam. You are also asked what is the average time to make one table. So obviously if two tables require 160 hours, so average time to make one table is, you just divide, which is 80 hours. So can you see the magic of learning curve? One table 100 hours. Incremental time to make the second table is just 60 hours. What is the average time to make one table? If two tables are made, 80 hours. And you'll be surprised to see here, the total time to make 8 tables is 409.6 hours. If I look at the average, 409.6 divided by 8, it's just 51.2 hours. So what is happening? The cumulative average time to make one table as production keeps doubling. Here, when I'm making 2 units, my average time to make one table is 80 hours, 160 divided by 2. But when I'm making 8 tables, my total hours is 409, but average time is just 51. From 80, I'm coming down to 51. That's the benefit, the multiplier effect of learning curve. As and when your production doubles, the total time to do the job reduces on an average significantly. And that is reflected in your costing, which helps you to become more competitive than your competitors. Now, one thing you need to understand specifically for CMA, I will talk about ACCA 5 paper also in a while in the same video. For CMA, normally learning curves would be somewhere between 50 to 100%. It will not be more than 100%, it will not be less than 50%, something in between. And most of the time it's given to you in the exam, how much is learning curve. Now, one of the drawbacks in cumulative average time learning model is you cannot find the time taken to make the 6th unit. 4 unit, you know, total 4 units will cost this much. You cannot find what is the time taken to make the 6th unit. That is one of the drawback of cumulative average time learning model. For that, there is a formula, but unfortunately that is not a part of the syllabus for CMA Part 1, but that is very much a part of ACCA F5 performance management paper. So now I'm talking about the algebraic method of using learning curve and how we apply the concept of learning curve through algebraic formula where this shortcoming will be overcome. So guys, now we are talking about the algebraic method for applying learning curve. The formula used is this: y is equal to ax to the power b. So guys, this is the formula which we used for algebraic method for learning curve, where y means the average time to make 1 unit. The average time to make 1 unit. A is the time taken to make the first unit. Remember the previous example, cumulative average time learning model, where I told you one table, the first table took 100 hours. So in that case, A should be 100 hours. X is the total number of units made in one go. And B is the learning index. B is calculated by log of learning rate divided by log of 2. So if we have learning rate, let's say 80% as in previous question, so log of 0.8 divided by log of 0.2, that would be B. And LR is the learning rate as a decimal. If it is 80%, we write 0.8. If it is 70%, we write 0.7. So here is a question, I'm just reading it for you. Assume a 80% learning rate applies. So that is given already in the question. 80% is the learning rate. 40 units have been made so far. Time taken to make the first unit is 100 hours. So A, in our example, this is A. So I'm just writing here A is 100 hours. 100 hours. The budget for the next month is 15 units. We'll talk about it. Laborers are paid 20 per hour. That is okay. Learning rate we know that is 80%, which is 0.8. Okay. B will be calculated. Obviously 0.8, log of 0.8 divided by log of 2. Minus 0.322. So now, question is asking me, calculate the time taken to make the 41st unit. As I told you, in cumulative average time learning model, we can calculate the time taken for the first unit. Second, means when production doubles, total 4 units, total 8 units. But not in between. Here we can do that. They're asking for the 41st unit. So how do we begin? First step, we will use this formula. Okay, we are trying to calculate y is equal to, the first unit took how many hours? The first unit took 100 hours. Okay, multiply by, if we are making a total of, let's say I'm talking about 40 units. So X is 40 units. Learning index B, which is log of 0.8 divided by log of 2, I am getting minus 0.322. So when I solve this, you will understand what I am getting the answer as. This is 100 into 40 to the power minus 0.322 will give me 0.3048. So when I multiply this, I get 30.48 hours. Now this 30.48 hours means this is the average time to make 1 unit if a total of 40 units are made and if the first unit takes 100 hours. See, this is the average time to make 1 unit provided the first unit takes 100 hours and we are making 40 units in one go. This is how the formula works. So now that we have the average time to make 1 unit, if a total 40 units are made, so remember this is the average time to make 1 unit, therefore total time for 40 units will be 40 multiplied by 30.48. So how much do I get? 40 into 30.48. This gives me 1219.2 hours. This is the total time for 40 units. So finally I found what is the total time for 40 units. Now I'm repeating the process, the same formula, but I'm making some changes. I'm taking y is equal to ax to the power b. Y is equal to first unit took 100 hours. X, now how many units I'm talking about? I'm talking about 41 units. So multiply by 41 to the power minus 0.322. So y is equal to 100 into 41 to the power this. 41 to the power minus 0.322. This gives me 3024 point. So y will be equal to 30.24. Now again, this is 30.24 hours is the average time to make 1 unit if 41 units are made in one go and the first unit took 100 hours. So if this is the average time to make 1 unit, we can find total time for 41 units. That will be 30.24. This is the average time for 1 unit, multiply by 41 units. So how much do we get? 30.24 into 41. This gives me 1239.84 hours. And this is also hours. So what I can do is, this is the total time for 41 units. And here I have total time for 40 units. Just subtract that, 1219.2. So if I subtract from this 1219.2, I get the time taken for the 41st units. This is the time taken for 41st unit. Why? Because this is the total time for 41 units. This is the total time for 40 units. If I subtract, this is the time for the 41st unit. This is the beauty of algebraic method for learning curve. Now, another requirement in the question they are saying is budgeted labor cost for next month. We need to calculate the budgeted total labor cost for next month. So we need to understand how many units we have planned. We are making 15 units. So what we can do is, for 40 units, I already have the total labor cost here. I will use the same formula. Y is equal to ax to the power b. Y is equal to a is the time taken for the first unit, which is 100 hours. X is, I'm talking about, see, 40 total hours for 40 units I already have. And 15 we are making next month. So I'm taking it as 55 units. Okay, to the power 0 minus 0.322. So y is equal to 100 into 55 to the power minus 0.322. That gives me 2751, sorry. So y would be 27.51. Now please understand, this 27.51 hours is actually the average time to make one unit, provided we make 55 units in one go and the first unit takes 100 hours. So if it's the average time to make one unit, I can multiply it by 55, which will give me the total time to make 55 units. So 27.51 into 55. This gives me the total time for making 55 units. It is 1513.05 hours. So if this is the total time for 55 units, I will subtract the time for 40 units from it, which is 1219.2. So if I subtract this, minus 1219.02, so I get 293.85. Now this is the time for additional 15 units, because this is the time for 40, this is the total time for 55 units, this is the total time for 40. 55 minus 40 is 15 hours, 55 minus 40 is 15 units, and this is the time for 15 units. So next month we are making 15 units, and the total labor hours required for 15 units, the total labor hours are required is 293.85. Just multiply it by the labor cost. If it is given to us $20, you just multiply it by $20. That will give you the labor cost, budgeted labor cost for the next month, which is 5,877. Guys, I hope you have understood this. If you have any questions, queries relating to learning curve, write it in the comment section. I will respond to that. If you like this video, please share it with your dear and near ones so that others can also benefit. Thank you so very much for your precious time.